Right, hi guys, we're back with another episode from day one of Festival of Work. Simon, you're joining us. So Simon is our MHR expert for today.
It's a big word.
I know, right? We are talking today about sentiment analysis.
Right.
It's been a bit of a hot topic, right, around the stands. I know you've had a lot of people talk to you about it, or ask about it.
Yeah, I think in the wider context of talent management, learning how you develop staff, how you understand where people are, I think that's definitely one of the themes that's been coming through. We've had a lot of people just wanting to understand how they get better out of their employees, or how do they understand their employees a little bit more.
So for those of you that are more naive about it, like myself, what really is sentiment analysis? What is it trying to achieve?
I think within people first, sentiment analysis is understanding text. It's textual analysis, and ultimately trying to work out if that's positive, negative, or neutral. Now, the reason that that's really useful is you take something like check-ins, okay, or any performance management. Traditionally, from an HR perspective, organisations have always marked or reported on, has someone had a performance appraisal, and how many box fives have we got, or something of that nature.
Yeah.
And that's all that they get, because that's all the understanding of the data that you can actually populate. So what sentiment analysis does is it takes it to the next level. It actually starts organisations being able to understand where problems are. Not just about if you've had it or not, but how good are the conversations? Where are the touch points of your business that we've got problems in? So you might have, if you take a whole organisation, you might have an area to the, HR, finance, whatever, and they've got really good sentiment, right? So actually you think that's good. You then look at a different area. If the sentiment analysis is really negative, there's a problem. Is it a change of policy that's gone out? Is it an individual that's actually creating really negative conversations that's being taken? And so it takes organisation reporting and understanding of organisation to the next level.
Interesting. So when did sentiment analysis come into people first?
That's a question. I think we've had sentiment analysis in for probably at least 12 months. So it's not something new.
Yeah.
It's just, and it's using Microsoft Cognitive Services. So one of the benefits of being on the cloud is being able to consume this sort of stuff. I think what we're talking to organisations are now about how they use it. I think, having the tool in the product is great, but it's then that interpretation of actually how do you pick that up, how do you change it, how do you look at, where it sits in the product is on one of the organisational dashboards. And actually along that side is your ENPS score for your organisation and your well-being, and actually your turnover and your absence rates. So you start taking one bit of data in terms of sentiment, and you start thinking about actually how loyal are our employees? Is that impacting our turnover? Is our absence rates high? You start to get the health of that area of the business.
That's really interesting, actually, because my next question was actually going to be, what else can sentiment analysis tell you, rather than just like the positive and negative conversations that go on? But you've already said there that it tells you kind of the tone of the department. It tells you kind of you could maybe be more proactive. Is it different for each team? For a HR team, what they look at compared to maybe a manager?
No, because ultimately you don't want to hide stuff away. Transparency is really important in this world. And so it's just about actually this is it. This is the data. This is what it's telling us. It's not a perfect solution, and any of this sort of stuff isn't always the perfect solution. It is open to interpretation. People might have different writing styles, but actually at least we're telling someone this is an area you need to focus on. And as we bid for HR and teams to become more strategic in the way that they operate, actually what we're doing is saying, look over here. Go over here and look at a problem.
Interesting. And one topic that Andy and I speak a lot about is kind of the topic of this year is empowerment. We talk a lot about, and managers want to empower employees. Can sentiment analysis help achieve that?
I think sentiment analysis can help empower people by sort of helping organisations to get the best out of people, looking at the problems they've got, making changes that they've got. It gives employees a voice that they didn't have previously, because those conversations, and there's lots of conversations that happen in businesses, but actually organisations get an understanding of problems, and actually they can start making changes on the back of it. And that's really empowering. That employee voice and that side of things is such an important part of where organisations need to look at.
Okay, definitely. And sorry.
No, I was going to ask
That's
actually.
all right.
I mean,
Go on, Andy.
A lot of people may not understand it or are starting to understand the uses and benefits, but how would an organisation go about implementing some sentiment analysis? How, if you're not using it at all, what's the first steps in trying to access that as a resource?
So within the system, it comes straight out of the box.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just functionality that's there. I suppose what organisations need to think of prior is the types of conversations that happen. So you're going to have conversations around regular updates. You might have annual conversations. You might have a return to work. You might have an exit interview. These are all different types of conversations that can be recorded in check-ins. And actually, it's important when you start thinking about the metrics that you want downstream in terms of the sentiment, to actually start thinking about that up front, because you need to be able to, if you want to be able to say, look at all our lever check-ins and what the sentiment of that is, well, yeah, that's possibly going to be negative. If you class that as a catch-up, it might sway the data. So you've got to start thinking about that. What conversations are people having? How are they better? What talking points do people need? And that then builds into the out-of-the-box functionality.
Do you think there's a fear barrier in terms of worrying about how your interpretation of recordings will be picked up, or worrying about how we should be saying or writing things? Do you think that's a barrier for people wanting to use this feature?
I think it's a challenge. I wouldn't say it's a barrier. It's something that when we were designing it, we thought of a lot. Okay, and we are very considerate about actually are we capturing the right tone of it. We've done an awful lot of testing. Yes, there's a challenge of gamification, but that's always going to be there, regardless of what you're talking about. One of the things that we do within check-ins, which we help to counteract that, is we take in employees and managers' conversations. So if this was just about a manager, in terms of a sentiment, and a manager saying this employee is rubbish, but putting it in a really positive way, that could skew sentiment. But actually, you're getting a balanced input because you're getting that from the employee and from the manager.
Okay, interesting. And just kind of a final point, I wondered about kind of the future of sentiment analysis.
Yeah.
As head of product, what conversations are going on about the future of sentiment analysis?
So I think it's not just sentiment analysis. I think it's more around textual analysis, and that's where we're looking at going next. And we've got things in the roadmap that'll be coming out in this quarter around understanding text. And actually, because that's all we're doing. So if you think about what sentiment analysis is doing, it's saying it's positive and negative. We can do things like, what are the key themes? Does bullying constantly get mentioned, and therefore we know we've got that problem. But actually, if we just start analysing and understanding text, we can summarise people's performance. A bit like an Amazon review, where you don't have to read through the 50 reviews before, you just read that summary of where you go. And that textual analysis can be applied everywhere. It could be applied in creating a job description. One of the things we're also putting into the product is around supporting talking points, actually pushing talking points out into it based on what type it is and what are the conversations that have been had previously, helping managers to write them. So if a manager isn't great at writing a talking point, they could say, I want a talking point about Andy always being late, but I want it in a really friendly manner. And again, we're using that sort of understanding of text to say, this is the talking point we want. So there's a lot of research going into where we want to. Ultimately, all of this is just about trying to have better conversations. Employee managers being empowered in that conversation, to go back to your point earlier, and actually having meaningful conversations.
Perfect. Well, I think that's a perfect point to end on as well. So thank you, Simon.
All right.
Obviously, if you want to find out more about what we do, MHR Global has a lot of information, some blogs, lots of topics on this. You can find out more about People First as well. If you're here today, come and say hello. If you're not, come and say hello. We're always here to talk about this. So thank you, Simon.
Cheers. Thank you very much.